The first time anyone noticed the note, it was already creased from being folded and unfolded too many times. It sat on the corner of the community library's front desk, weighted down by a smooth white pebble, as if the words beneath it needed protection from being blown away. The paper was ordinary, torn from a notebook, the handwriting careful but not fancy. It read, "You matter more than you think. I hope today is kinder to you." No one knew who had written it. The librarian, Mrs. Alden, assumed it belonged to someone else and left it where it was. A teenager picking up a stack of exam guides paused to read it and snorted softly, embarrassed by the warmth he felt in his chest. An elderly man waiting for the computer signed his name in the reservation book and glanced at it twice, his fingers lingering on the desk a moment longer than necessary. By afternoon, the note had become part of the room, like the quiet hum of the heater or the dust motes floating in sunlight. People read it without comment, carrying its message with them in ways that were invisible and quiet. The person who had written it, a woman named Clara, did not return to see what happened next. She had written it that morning while sitting at her kitchen table, staring into a cup of tea that had long gone cold. The idea had come to her suddenly, not because she felt particularly hopeful, but because she didn't. The night before had been heavy with worry, the kind that presses down on your chest and makes sleep feel undeserved. She had lost her job the previous month, her savings were thinning, and the silence of her apartment felt louder each day. Clara had always believed that words could be gentle companions. When she was a child, her mother used to leave small notes in her lunchbox, nothing poetic, just reminders that someone was thinking of her. Those scraps of paper had made classrooms less intimidating and afternoons less lonely. Remembering that, Clara tore out a page, wrote the sentence that came to mind, and decided to leave it somewhere it might be found. She chose the library because it was neutral ground, a place people went quietly carrying their own private worlds. Across town, Daniel stepped into the library later that same day because he didn't know where else to go. He had just come from the hospital, the antiseptic smell still clinging to his jacket. His wife, Mara, was sleeping after another round of treatment, her face pale but peaceful. The doctor had spoken carefully, choosing words that sounded hopeful but felt fragile. Daniel nodded at the right times, then walked until his feet brought him somewhere warm and quiet. He noticed the note as he leaned on the desk, searching his pockets for his library card. He read it once, then again. The words were simple, almost obvious, but they caught him off guard. "You matter more than you think." He felt something loosen behind his ribs, just enough for a breath to slip through without effort. He folded the note carefully and put it in his pocket before he even realized what he was doing. For the rest of the week, the note traveled with him. He read it while waiting in hospital corridors and while sitting alone in his car before driving home. It didn't change his circumstances, but it softened the sharpest edges of them. One afternoon, after Mara smiled at him and said, "You look lighter today," Daniel took the note out and showed it to her. She read it slowly, then held it against her chest. "Whoever wrote this," she said, "they gave me something too." The next morning, the note was gone from the library desk, replaced by another. This one was written in a different hand, slightly slanted, the ink darker. "If you're reading this, I hope you find one small thing today that makes you smile." Mrs. Alden noticed it when she opened the doors and raised an eyebrow, but she didn't remove it. Something about the presence of these notes felt right, like an unspoken agreement. Over the next few days, the notes multiplied. They appeared on the bulletin board near the stairs, taped gently to the water fountain, tucked into returned books. None of them were signed. None of them tried to be profound. They spoke of rest, of patience, of unseen strength. People began to look for them, even if they didn't admit it out loud. A young mother named Lena found one tucked into a parenting book she had borrowed out of desperation. It read, "You're doing better than you think. Take a breath." She laughed, a tired, grateful sound, and pressed the paper into the pages of the book like a bookmark she would need later. A college student named Omar found one taped near the computer lab that said, "It's okay to ask for help. He stared at it for a long time, then turned around and signed up for a tutoring session he had been avoiding. No one organized this quiet movement. It grew the way kindness often does, through imitation rather than instruction. People who had been comforted wanted to offer the same comfort, even if they never knew who would receive it. Clara discovered what was happening by accident. She returned to the library a week later to use the printer, her mind preoccupied with job applications and rejection emails. As she walked past the front desk, she saw a note that looked strangely familiar. Her heart skipped when she read it, realizing it echoed the tone of the one she had written. She moved slowly through the building, noticing the others. Dozens of small messages, each one a quiet hand on the shoulder. Clara sat down at a table and felt tears sting her eyes, not from sadness this time, but from the overwhelming realization that something she had done on a difficult morning had grown beyond her. She didn't tell anyone it had started with her. Instead, she took out her pen and wrote another note. "Thank you for being here," it said. She tucked it into a book of poetry and left it behind. Weeks passed, and the notes became part of the library's identity. Visitors spoke of them in hushed tones, as if they might scare them away by being too loud about it. Mrs. Alden kept a small box behind the desk where people could leave extra paper and pens. She pretended it was just for scrap, but everyone knew what it was for. One rainy afternoon, a man in a worn coat stood near the entrance, reading a note taped to the glass. His name was Henry, and he had recently lost his home. The world had narrowed for him to a series of closed doors and polite refusals. The note said, "You are not invisible." Henry swallowed hard. He had felt invisible for so long that seeing the word written down felt like someone had finally noticed him. He didn't have a pen, but he had a pencil stub in his pocket. He sat at a table and wrote slowly, carefully forming the letters. "I hope someone shows you kindness today, the way this place showed me." He left it near the exit, unsure if anyone would care. They did. A high school girl named Sophia read it on her way out after a long afternoon of group projects and quiet anxiety. She thought of the man she had passed near the door and wished she had smiled at him. The next day, she brought an extra sandwich from home and offered it to him when she saw him again. He accepted it with a nod, his eyes shining. None of this made headlines. There were no photographs, no speeches. The gift was made of simple words and simple acts, passed hand to hand without expectation. But it changed the texture of ordinary days. People walked a little slower. They looked up from their phones a little more often. They wrote notes when they felt strong, and read them when they felt weak. Clara eventually found a new job, nothing glamorous, but steady. On her last day of unemployment, she returned to the library one more time. She watched as a stranger read a note and smiled to herself. Clara felt a quiet certainty settle inside her, the kind that doesn't shout but stays. As she left, she added one final note to the board. "Your words matter. Even the simple ones." And somewhere in that building, someone who needed to hear exactly that would find it, fold it carefully, and carry it with them into a world that felt just a little less heavy.